What's your personal tipping point? You don't change because you want to or because you're ready. You change out of necessity because you're done. It's rarely planned or graceful, and it often feels like everything's kind of unraveling at once. A lot of times it's that decision that you can't avoid making anymore. It's time to stop tolerating what you shouldn't. It's time to take a step towards something else, or to finally put yourself first instead of avoiding that project. And then there's the realization that something really profound needs to be addressed. You run out of stuff to watch on Netflix, and then next thing you know, you're standing in the mirror wondering, who am I? Realizing you need to be more present for yourself, for the people around you that you love, and for the things that are important to you. If you let fear creep in, if you allow a bad environment and a bad support system to talk you out of doing the things that you need to do in your life, you're going to get stuck there. It always feels scary when your old scaffolding, right? Whatever was holding you up before, very OSHA not approved scaffolding, right? And now it has fallen away. And it feels like nothing's left, but there's a new footing being built. And as you take steps, as you take each thing a day at a time, a step at a time, it gets better. What's your personal tipping point? That moment when life stops negotiating with you and you don't change because you want to or because you're ready. You change out of necessity because you're done. Most people believe that change begins with motivation, but it really begins when staying the same becomes unbearable. Most people can point to a single moment, before and after X event or X decision that changed them. That was like the beginning of the avalanche, that everything fell apart, but it all came together and they slowly started to figure things out and get to a stable ground. Maybe for the first time ever. It's rarely planned or graceful, and it often feels like everything's kind of unraveling at once. This video is about the tipping point, the moment that starts the avalanche. Not because you want the chaos, but because truth finally outweighed fear for you. I see this all the time with clients. There's always like one event that becomes a catalyst for them coming to a life coach, them going to get help, them making major change in their life at some point. It's typical things you might expect. Your spouse approaches you and says, I want a divorce. Big change there. The death or the loss of someone close. A horrible relationship or heartbreak. Complete burnout or some kind of mental health crisis. And honestly, over the last 6 years or so, the pandemic has been a big one in my business. It being the initiation for a lot of change, a lot of realizations, a lot of deep reflection that causes people to come to those certain breaking points, that tipping point, right, where everything needs to change. So what are the common forms it takes? A lot of times it's that decision that you can't avoid making anymore. It is time to finally leave that terrible relationship. It's time to stop tolerating what you shouldn't. It's time to take a step towards something else. Or to finally put yourself first instead of avoiding that project. And then there's the realization that something really profound needs to be addressed. This one came up during the pandemic a lot. A lot of people sitting alone at home with themselves and their own thoughts, and you run out of stuff to watch on Netflix, and you run out of flour to bake bread, and then next thing you know, you're standing in the mirror wondering, who am I? A lot of people got to that place, and unfortunately and fortunately, in the sense that it sparked change for a lot of people, some people started to remember childhood traumas and really fall into a mental health decline and ask those big questions about their life and not feel very good about where they were at. And then there's having realizations about just tolerating more than you should from others throughout your life. Just realizing that maybe you haven't taken the greatest care of yourself because you just haven't been very present. And that's not something to be ashamed of. It's once you develop awareness, it's really important to act on it, right? Realizing your physical and mental health just aren't in a great place and saying, oh boy, How did we get here? We've all been there. Realizing you need to be more present for yourself, for the people around you that you love, and for the things that are important to you. And then a lot of other themes that come up is just a deep exhaustion. Tired of feeling like life has no meaning. Tired of empty interactions, relationships that just don't have much depth and don't really lead anywhere. Poor relationship and family dynamics, like I said, and just total burnout on the way you've been living life and maybe working that job that means nothing to you and just pains you to wake up to go to it every morning. These are all common ways that the tipping point begins. For me, the tipping point came when I decided that I really needed to address my mental health, and I wasn't in a very good place. I had just left a really, really bad relationship with someone we could safely say is a narcissist. I sought therapy to kind of unpack that, and at the same time, I was having gender identity issues. I had left grad school, and, I was just tired of feeling this discomfort with myself that I was finally starting to wake up to what it really was. It was, that discomfort with my gender, and I had to deal with it. I sought therapy to deal with kind of those two things, and they had to be dealt with at the same time, unfortunately, because the end of that bad relationship and then my relationship with another person in my life that was also very similar in the way of being a narcissist, I was surrounded by this negativity, and I was also dealing with something super profound and really in a vulnerable place. I was in a place where I had to make a lot of decisions based on fear. I knew I had to do this deeply personal thing for myself, but I was very distracted by the chaos around me that I certainly was in, but I didn't really want to be in anymore. I was at survival level at this point in my life, and I knew I needed to make some changes. I had to get away from my surroundings, and I had to do that all at once for my own peace, for my own sanity, and for my safety. Hey there, what's up? My name's Ashley. I'm a life coach, and I help people who are going through big life changes, burnout, spiritual awakening, find their purpose, find their direction, and live a better life. I also help people who are ADHD and on the spectrum find their purpose, find their flow, and build a life that is more conducive to who they are and how they function. So if any of that sounds like you, give this video a like, subscribe, follow along. I post new videos nearly every week. I didn't know where that would lead. Those moments in life where there's something you have to do, but you have no idea what's on the other side of it, they're so scary. But, I had to do it. Not because I knew with any certainty that it would all work out or that it would be the right decision. But I only knew that I could no longer go on living the way I was living, surrounded by the surroundings that I had. And, in the headspace that I was in because of everything else going on with me that I was trying to address. When you're at your lowest, you're much more susceptible to harmful dynamics. And usually that starts at home, right? The way you treat yourself, the way you feel about yourself. Those things echo into your relationships, into the way you interact with people and the way they interact with you. Developing self-awareness is the most important thing you can do to try to combat that and try not to get stuck at the tipping point. Because if you let fear creep in, if you allow a bad environment and a bad support system to talk you out of doing the things that you need to do in your life, you're going to get stuck there. And being vulnerable and lacking self-awareness at the same time, it's what I like to call narcissist delight. This is the place in your life where you need to be careful about the relationships you have. And many people do this. This isn't about shame. It's about learning that self-awareness from maybe your past experiences or something you're going through right now. I allowed narcissists into my life because I was in a bad place. When you're vulnerable and when you have low self-esteem, you miss a lot of red flags. And having that realization, while really important because I made the changes that I needed to make in order to remove myself and do better and create much better relationships built on love and trust and generosity. But making those changes still came with emotional consequences. A lot of hurt feelings and very worldview changing events. Luckily for me, worldview changing in a positive way, ultimately. Sometimes events like this in your life, they can shatter your perception of reality and what you thought was important. And that can be really destabilizing for a while. That emptiness of leaving what you know and what you might maybe be trauma bonded to for the unknown. And the unknown being the change you need to make that you don't really know how it's going to pan out. Going through these experiences, it's not weakness. It's simply just a lack of awareness of the importance of protecting yourself, protecting your energy, and your peace. And we all go through it. There's going to come a point in your life where you need to make some radical change. Making radical change in your life rarely comes with solid footing. For me, there was uncertainty, some emotional volatility, and a loss of structure. And throw on top of it, physical and financial challenges that followed for a while. This is often the place where people start to think, maybe I made a mistake. But that's probably not the case. It always feels scary when your old scaffolding, right? Whatever was holding you up before, very OSHA not approved scaffolding, right? And now it has fallen away. And it feels like nothing's left. But there's a new footing being built. And as you take steps, as you take each thing a day at a time, a step at a time, it gets better. And it did for me. I decided I had to stabilize internally. For me, managing my energy, feeling good in my body, those were things that were probably the most grounding for me at the time. So I focused a lot of my energy on going to the gym and spending all my spare time that I wasn't trying to make money to scrape by, working on starting a business and figuring out what I wanted to do next. And I absolutely kept going to therapy like every single week. Even when I could barely fucking afford it, bro. Like, for real. And I focused on building healthy relationships. I more or less took a break from dating for a while, and I was very much focused on building a better me. I began to gain more insights and develop more clarity and more resilience, step by step. Once I was more regulated and grounded, I was able to turn inward. And this is where momentum begins. Not because life is perfect, but because you're no longer abandoning yourself. You're there, you're present, you're trying in the right ways, right? And once you've gained some clarity, then you can gain expansion. And for a lot of people, that's where things get more spiritual. People are more interested in what are the key things that I really want out of this life? Like, what key experiences, what key achievements, what do I want to do to better myself? What do I want to do to share love and time with the people I care about? And what do I want to do to help others? I began having positive and revealing spiritual experiences, finally understanding love and unity and craving that, and being able to see it everywhere, even when things are looking pretty ugly on planet Earth. If you're looking in the right places, you will see love and unity. While awareness of what's going on out there is important, what you choose to fill your mind with is a choice. This is usually the point in life where people find their spiritual selves, often following a big tumultuous, phase of life, season of life, where you've got to make those big changes. Like I said, we've reached that tipping point where something big has got to change. That's often where people become more open, either because they've just so much gone through hell, or they've just reached that expansion phase where they're like, well, what's next? Like, what do I really want here out of life? Once you're out of like being off the hamster wheel and trying to survive day in and day out with just your thoughts alone, you can ask yourself bigger questions. It takes a while to get there, and that's okay. Where you're at is where you need to be, and doesn't mean that you need to stay there, but it's okay to be where you're at. For me, a deep curiosity began. I became much more interested in what humans are and why we're here and what we should be doing with our lives. What's going to give us satisfaction at this point? That openness can become a source of grounding, not escapism. Though I will say that in the beginning, spirituality can become and often looks like escapism. It is important to understand, to take off not more than you can chew. It's important to ground yourself. It's important to take breaks. It's important to Integrate all the things that you're learning and experiencing before moving on to the next level, if you will. There's no rush on your spirituality or your spiritual gifts or your ability to meditate. It's more about consistency and intention. What I mean to say is it's just important to find balance with it and not dive in so deep that you forget to ground yourself. And if you do forget to ground yourself and you just are diving in all the time and it's become too much, you'll know. The universe will remind you in some way that it's important to live a human life too and ground yourself. It's not all rainbows and sunshine either. It certainly comes in waves. Big waves of expansiveness followed by inward phases of integration and deep work on yourself. It is sometimes heavy, but also necessary. So just remember that growth isn't about staying high in that sense. It's about learning how to integrate those things into daily life. Nowadays, I find myself comfortable, but not complacent. It's an important distinction. Life is always going to be lifing. There's never a point where you're just done doing work on yourself. Anybody who tells you differently is wrong. We should always be learning, evolving, and refining, and sharing what we've learned with others. You want to find the balance between not chasing chaos, but not avoiding growth either. This is when you know you found maturity and embodiment, and some discernment as well. So, that tipping point that creates that avalanche in your life, what actually emerges on the other side of that is awareness, is courage, is a deep self-trust, authenticity, and focus on what really drives you, as well as better tools to navigate whatever comes next. So if you're feeling stuck, what thought keeps repeating? Does it sound like one based in fear? If it does, I want you to rewrite it from truth rather than fear. Put it on a piece of paper, put it somewhere you can see it, and just try to imprint that in your mind instead of the previous thought. Ask yourself, what are you tolerating right now that is costing you your peace? You don't have to fix it right now. Just notice it. And then I want you to not overhaul your life, but choose one thing. Maybe it's a boundary. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's a habit shift. And incorporate that into your next moves regularly if it's something that requires repeat, and see how you feel. Prove to yourself that movement is possible. Pay attention to what you can no longer tolerate. Remember, it's not weakness, it's direction. And if you're standing at the tipping point right now, you don't need the whole plan. You just need to stop betraying what you already know. Till next time.